Welcome again to our course on biodesign, strategies for innovation and design on bioengineering. Today we're going to take a look at the clinical strategy phase, so let's start. For today's class, I want you to recognize the primary goals of a clinical strategy and to understand the importance of establishing overreaching clinical strategy for early non-clinical, preclinical, and human clinical studies. I want you to appreciate the different types of clinical studies that there are and a little bit of their designs. I want you to learn also the process involved in planning and initiating human clinical trials and to understand some tactical considerations for developing safe and cost-effective clinical trials. So again, if we come back to our biodesign testing continuum, we can see that the clinical phase is at the very end of this process, and it includes some preclinical work that has to be done in terms of protocol design, but at the end of the day it's more focused on the live human testing. So let's take a deep look on that square. If we think about preclinical, clinical, and post-market testing, you can see that the most important part of it is probably the live human testing. But previous planification of these trials and to know that they are robust, it's going to be absolutely important for having success in this phase. Also, as you may think, for some types of devices, you're going to have to perform post-market clinical trials in order to assure that long-term endpoints are met. Everything in the clinical trial strategy depends at the very end of the day in the classification of your device, meaning in the risk, because the more risk, the more clinical requirements probably you're going to be asked for. As such, we can remember that there are three classes on the United States regulatory system for medical devices: class 1, 2, and 3, but there are other classes in some other systems, such as class 2 and class 2B, or class 1A in Mexico. If we think about classification and risk and why that is going to be important for clinical trials, well, we can see here in the next slide that classification is going to define the regulatory pathway of every device. As such, 510K devices, as we have explored on the regulatory basics part of this course, does not require a lot of clinical data, if any. But sometimes in a de novo pathway it is required some pivotal clinical trials, but at the end of the day those are going to be small and fairly easy to perform. The difficult part is if the risk classification of your device is really high, and so you have to perform a PMA. In that case, you're going to be asked for pivotal clinical data, which require these first clinical trials, but then it's probable that they are going to ask you for multiple trials at the final stage of your clinical phase. And that's going to be costly and, of course, more difficult to perform. In subsequent presentations of this course, we're going to take a look at some of the difference between the study designs, but at this phase, the only thing important to remember here is that the more risk your product is, the more clinical trials you're going to need. And as such, you need to think about your clinical strategy in terms of money and time and resources, even when designing your product early on in this stage. With this, I want you to take a look at this cartoon in which it is expressed the importance of human clinical trials, in which at the end of the day the only thing to remember is please don't try anything on yourself if it's not controlled and safe. But at the end of the day, clinical trials are the milestone of utmost importance in assuring safety and efficacy of whatever you do. Alright, and with this we have concluded our presentation on clinical trial strategy. Please refer to our biodesign book for more information. My name is Luis Soengsen. Thank you for watching.